Hello, BookTube. Over the past few weeks, Katie Books has been working on a triptych of videos. 10 classics you must read. The first video of the triptych was 10 classics you must read between 2300 BCE and 1899 CE, or BC and AD, however you use those dates. The second video was 10 modern classics that you must read that were published between 1900 and 1999. And the third is 10 contemporary classics you must read, which were published after 2000. A number of other booktubers, namely Steve Donahue, have commented and produced their own 10 lists of the older classics, modern classics, and the contemporary classics. And others have as well. And I've participated somewhat. I've done a top 10 classics you must read from 2300 BCE to 1899 CE, and I've been trying to do 10 modern classics you must read the last few days. This is my third attempt at filming this video, so hopefully this one will be a success. I was planning on doing this last night, but there was a time constraint. There was a Steve Donahue video I wanted to watch, as well as the live stream, so I had about 10 to 15 minutes to make the video. And as I was doing it, I realized that while the order doesn't really matter, this isn't a top 10 list, this is just a 10 list, that there was some organization that I wanted to adhere to, and the list as it was didn't quite work for that. So I reworked it, reordered it, and hopefully this one will work a lot better. But also thinking about these lists, it's got me wanting to revisit the classics and canonical works and candidates. So that might be something I look into for my 2023 reading plans. Also, it doesn't hurt that a number of other booktubers seem to have similar plans, whether inspired by this triptych or not. But anyway, I've been going on for a few minutes now, so let's look at the 10 list. So the first 5 are more traditional works that you would expect to be on a list like this. And then the other 5 are more possibly accurate as to what actually will be influential and canonical in the decades and centuries to come, but who knows. But this is my list of top 10 classics you must read. So the first 2 works I have are poetry. First is The Wasteland by T.S. Eliot. This is a poem that basically launched modernism, and you can't really escape it. Most poetry after The Wasteland owes a huge debt to it and T.S. Eliot's work, for good or ill, depending what your opinions are on modern and contemporary poetry. The second I have is Howl by Allan Ginsberg. While this work may not necessarily be as influential on poetic development, I think it does touch on the zeitgeist of the mid-20th century. So the next 2 are novels. First up is Mrs. Dalloway by Virginia Woolf. This is probably one of the best examples of modernism in novel there is, and I quite enjoyed it. If I remember correctly, I remember quite enjoying it. So the next one is The Grapes of Wrath by John Steinbeck. This is a great social novel that many posit to be the great American novel, particularly for the 20th century, and I would perhaps tend to agree with that. I remember reading it remember it quite fondly, although it has been 20 years or more since I read it. So it's one of the reasons why I would like to sort of revisit a lot of these. The next work, number 5, is a work of drama. I had hoped to be able to add at least some drama to these lists. Was successful for 2. The next one is going to be rather weird. So anyway, so for my drama representation, I'm adding Raisins in the Sun by Lorainne Hainsbury. This is a seminal work of American theater that is absolutely awesome, although it's been forever since I've read it. So again, one more impetus to really revisit a lot of these works. So moving on to more genre fiction. I would say the last 5 are. First up is Dune by Frank Herbert. This is one of the great works of science fiction, and is absolutely one of the most influential works of science fiction. I mean, Tatooine is basically Arrakis. Next up is The Lord of the Rings by J.R.R. Tolkien. There would be no fantasy, or definitely no adult fantasy, without The Lord of the Rings. The Lord of the Rings made fantasy what it is. Next up is The Murder on the Orient Express by Agatha Christie. Like what Steve said with the Mysterious Affair at Styles, a lot of mystery can be traced back to Agatha Christie and her work. And I've never read The Mysterious Affair at Styles, so I'm adding one of Christie's greatest works, which is The Murder on the Orient Express, which is certainly the best Poirot novel and probably one of her best novels, period. At number 9, I'm going with some comics, and I will echo Steve's argument for Superman. And you really could pretty much just read any Superman for this. I mean, what would American comics be without Superman? And at number 10, I'm going with a work of manga, Dragon Ball by Akira Toriyama. Dragon Ball is one of the seminal works of manga in the 20th century. Perhaps Osamu Tezuka's work would be more appropriate here, but I've never read it. I know Kieran added Akira to this list, but I've never read it, and I think Akira was added more for cyberpunk than necessarily for its influence on manga and really kind of Japanese cultural influence, which Dragon Ball does work for, or does accomplish, because Dragon Ball changed shonen manga and was one of the first manga to be popularly distributed in the United States, at least certainly through the anime adaptation. I don't quite remember about the manga itself. I have read I think the first few volumes of it, and I definitely do want to revisit Dragon Ball in the new year, and definitely that. But yeah, so that's my list of the top 10 modern classics I think you must read. And it's thinking about this list has I'm definitely feeling a desire to uh, kind of revisit these. Although of the 10, it's almost certainly going to be Dragon Ball. Although I do have Dune and The Lord of the Rings and The Grapes of Wrath. I mean, I do actually have a plan for The Grapes of Wrath. And I actually have Murder in the Orient Express too, which isn't a big omnibus edition of Agatha Christie's work, which I have a number of. Uh, but I think besides The Grapes of Wrath, because I do have a definite plan for that, I think I'm probably going to go for Dragon Ball. But we shall see. Anyway, BookTube, hopefully either later this evening or sometime tomorrow, I will be doing the 10 contemporary books, although I'm not entirely sure if I can recommend that you must read them. This one's going to be a bit weirder. But anyway, so other BookTube plans this week. I'm hoping to get a few more tags in this week. There's also a climatic issue coming basically a Arctic blast later this week that will likely affect or will perhaps affect some videos. Obviously, I live in Texas, and well, the last time we had something like this, there was a major power outage for much of the state. And while I managed to avoid that one, can't guarantee that I won't be affected this next time. So hopefully there will be power and there won't be any issues and I can do some videos. But at the same time, my reading this week has been successful, but not as productive. So I might just do a weekly read that deals with the one book will have managed to finish this week, and probably add pretty much the rest of this week, which would probably be either late Thursday or Friday into the following reading week. So we shall see how it goes. But anyway, hopefully things work out. So anyway, BookTube, I'm definitely starting to ramble. So until I see you perhaps later this evening, thank you. Have a great afternoon. Stay warm and stay safe.